Okay, good morning, everybody. Once again, it's wonderful to see all of you online, and thanks to Shifu who is here today. As all of you know, that tomorrow is our day of diligence, and that's why many Shifu had already left the abode. But very thankful for Shifu to join us today. I was on earlier and I was listening to our sisters sharing their own personal experiences, and I'm very excited to hear that everybody is so diligent, even if we are encountering problems of our own. I think that is the journey itself, and I'm beginning to think that having this community together it's a lot more meaningful than just having one person on our own doing the realization and enlightenment. So I think it is very important. It's an affirmation. When I hearing whether it was Sister Effie or Sister Suisan sharing how they feel when answering certain issues, it's a more affirmation of, yeah, this is the right thing. Other people are feeling the same thing. Or, oh, this is my problem too. And I'm so glad that they're able to point out, what might be so obvious to some of you, but it is really, really not so clear to the people that are sort of lost, including myself. So I was listening in and I was thinking, this is really wonderful. So I think today there's going to be an extended session towards the end. So I'm sure Sister Xiaojing will share more with others, with all of you, about the extended session. But we're going to begin today. There's many things to cover, and I'm hoping that we can cover them all, which I think is nearly impossible. But we'll see how this goes. So as we know that on June 3rd, on Wednesday, we Master sort of officially began chapter 22 officially. However, we're sort of still connecting in a way, segueing from chapter 21. So I wanted to do a little bit summarizing of what we have actually learned from 21. And there are many things. So it's impossible for me to cover all of them. I just wanted to get through some of the things that I thought were important that we learned. So what did we learn? What do we learn from chapter 21? So the first one is I wanted to go through what are the transcendent powers or the supernatural powers of Tathagata. What exactly is that? What did Master tell us what they are? Are they being able to, go somewhere and do something crazy? Well, not crazy. Tathagata aren't crazy, but, do some powers that are beyond our imagination. So what are they and what did Master say? And in my mind, so what are these powers? I think to define what the powers are, to define what they are, one of the things that we can define them, though not completely, one of the ways that we can define what a power is to define what it can actually do. And I think that what it actually does is it makes something that used to be impossible into something that is now possible. Something that wasn't possible or wasn't there before, after you do this, having the power, it's now something possible. Something that was impossible for other people, now for you, it's possible. And so that is the difference. For some people, that's impossible. Now it is possible. And that's the way the power is. So that's how I define sort of what this transcendent power is. It used to be not. Now it is. What makes a difference? This power that it's now here. So, for example, I think especially yesterday, for many of you that were online, yesterday was the day, the entire day, the morning and the afternoon, that was allocated for our brothers and sisters from Malaysia to have the meeting, online gathering with Master. So that, I think, in the past, there has been many different opportunities where the brothers and sisters will come back and they will sit in this very crowded room, and others will sit in other rooms, right? So not everybody will get to share, and not everybody will be in the same room. But when we expand the idea of the room to be the entire globe, or when we utilize the technology of the online and the cloud and and online meetings, then all of a sudden, the Vultures Peak isn't so small anymore. All of a sudden, the Vultures Peak isn't that Vultures Peak. It's now much, much bigger. So in the past, it's not that it wasn't possible. It's just that it wasn't done. Now that it's done, and in fact, it might be done for a longer extended period of time. So that, in a way, it's not that it wasn't technically possible before. It's just that it wasn't done. Now it is possible. Now it has become a possibility that everybody can think of. And Master have always related that to the ability to be able to reach out to all directions, right? It wasn't even just at Malaysia. I know many, many people who were also online that weren't in Malaysia. They also wanted to hear. And all of a sudden, the voices no longer just, going from my end to your end, but rather you're sitting over there. The voices are going out to 10 directions. And if you're willing to listen, you'll pick it up. And you don't have to be sitting at the direction where Master was speaking to. You'll also be able to hear. And that is now the supernatural powers of, the transcendent powers of Master's voice. And I think that has been a very important example. And Master always says, reaching a particular part of the sutra will always be able to affirm what we are doing right now. And this is exactly it, right? During this COVID time. And the other example that Master has always talked about was during COVID-19 pandemic, right? And especially in many, many countries, there were movement control orders, right? Or conditional, or there were other restrictions, curfews, whatnot, in different parts of the world, different parts of the country. There are always these restrictions and limitations abound. However, with all these restrictions, people were thinking, we can't do this, we can't do that. And we did. And Master always talked about how in Philippines, in Malaysia, in Indonesia, and then in Burma, in Myanmar, and then going further to other countries where it wasn't possible, but now it is possible. And not only that, we're able to ship all these things across all the restrictions. Can you imagine when the entire world is locked down? We, an NGO, was able to ship all these things, now numbering over 8 million pieces of these personal equipments to be able to help those in need, whether it's in bulk or in small packages. These things are able to get there. And that is something that if you ask other people that are in the transportation business, they would tell you it's nearly impossible. So we are not professionals, but we're able to do that. And that shows you this transcendent power. Okay, so these are two of the many, many, many examples that Masters share with us. And we'll talk about more, but only two that stands out to share with people while we're talking about the transcendent powers of the Tathagata. We are experiencing right now. And it's so easy that if you don't look at it, you don't even realize that these are the transcendent powers that are in play. And it takes Master to put it out, point it out, and say, hey, don't you think that it is something that is special? Because for us, online meeting has been there all along. We don't realize how cherishable it is, how the transcendent power it is, until Master tells us, this is something different. This is something that really tells you that there is a transcendent power because your heart and the spirit we're now combined as one. So a lot of times we are exhibiting these transcendent powers, yet we don't even realize it. It takes someone to point it out and say, hey, did you know that you're doing this already? So this chapter isn't so much talking about what more powers that someone already has, but rather the powers that you already have, but you just didn't realize it. Okay, so all these things, Master had going back all, that it was already there. We were just doing something that we were capable of doing, but we didn't realize we can. Doesn't it sound very familiar? Yes, that's exactly what Master and the Buddha has been talking about the whole time, that we were originally inherently having the Buddha nature. We could already do this. We already have the transcendent powers. We either didn't realize it or we were using it and we just didn't think of it as something that was powerful. Okay, so to many people, that we didn't think was possible. Now they were possible. So it didn't mean that we didn't have it before. We had it all along, but now we're just using it, and they are now complete before. And that was a one way. That was a wake up call. That was a call waking up everybody and says, you can do this. So for many of you, they were thinking about not being able to wake up in the morning. After you wake up a couple of times, you realize you could. And it's not like a superpower. Maybe for someone who couldn't do that, they listen to you and they say, oh, so you live at the abode. Doesn't that mean that you had to wake up at 3:50 and 4 o'clock every day? Yes, it is. Wow, that is amazing. How can you do that? Well, you know, I think it was like Sister Effie said, that once it becomes like breathing, it just becomes part of you. To other people that couldn't do it, they would think it's a transcendent power. It transcends you to the next level. Oh, you're the group that wakes up at 4. But to you, once it becomes normal, then it just is, right? So a great athlete wasn't born that way, but they train. And that's how they become, you know, more powerful than we normal people are. Buddha is just the same. It just takes training, a different type of training, but it's all the same. The rule of the game, the rule of life is all the same, okay? So that's the power. The point isn't to talk about the power that we don't have. The point is to talk about the power that's already within you. How do you exploit that? So how, right? So how did you get that was already there, right? The thing that was already there, the thing that you already have. How do you exploit that? How do you explore that? How do you get there, right? That becomes the next question. So Master told us, start from something small, something insignificant. Start from there, and we can observe it mindfully, know the ins and outs of this very small thing. It will take us to the boundless skies, right? So even, what does that mean? It means the very same thing that we know, from 1 to infinity. Starting from one small thing, and you can expand it to a lot more. So what does that mean? And I think this was going back to one of the things that the brothers and sisters from Malaysia was asking about the refugees, right? The refugees. And Master was talking about this on several days. For several days, Master has been talking about all these sufferings in the world, all the sufferings in the world. But how do we get there? How do we help all these countless people that are suffering? And even if we're helping one, there are thousands of others that we haven't helped or we couldn't reach. What do we do? So going back to the teaching, starting from 1. Let us start with the ones that we can actually reach and help. Not think about all the ones that we couldn't, but focus. Focus hard. Be mindful. It's not like helping here while thinking that there are thousands of others that we couldn't help. No. Focus on one and do it really well. You do it so well that maybe there is an opportunity to do more. But when you're doing this, focus on it. And that's one thing that Master shared. Master talked about it one day. Master talks about that whenever she's walking, she puts her mind on her feet. And I try to do the same thing. You know, I keep that in my mind and I try to think about it. You know, am I thinking about on my feet? And while obviously when I'm thinking about this, I am not thinking about my feet. I'm thinking about why I'm not thinking about my feet. This is very weird, right? So all I'm thinking is, let's try to focus on the task at hand, right? Be mindful of your steps. Be mindful of your every step that you take. What does that mean? Are you thinking about this, right? So same thing that Master is telling us here. Let's start with the things that we can do. Start with the ones that we can reach and help, right? And also, it's not just the people that we're helping, but we have all these afflictions, right? The moment that you're listening right now, and then something will creep in, and then it will make you think about something else. Well, we have boundless afflictions. The moment that you forget, or it could be the very next moment, the next millisecond, something will come in, and it will hinder us. It will trouble us. How do we cultivate? With all these boundless afflictions, how do you get rid of every single one of them? The answer is the same. Start from 1. Let us start with the affliction and habitual tendencies that we can actually change and remove. Start with something that we can actually do. Build up from there. And that is the key. I think Master is telling us that all these superpowers start with one. You never, from overnight, becoming like this right now. Even if you look at Tzu Chi, it takes 50 years plus to get to where we are. It takes 50 years of all these perseverance of Master to get to where we are. It takes all of you, all of us volunteers to get Tzu Chi to where we are. So that looks to be amazing. But it starts with what Master wanted to do to save that one charity case from the very, very beginning. It starts from what we can do. Master knew that there were many, many more people that were suffering, but she had to begin with one. So which one was that? And how did we do that? So she tried to pull together that 8,000 NT to help one person. That was what we started. So it wasn't to focus on all the people that we couldn't do, but rather, while we're doing something, figuring out what we can reach out to others. So tendencies, habitual tendencies and afflictions is the same. Start from the ones that we can actually get rid of and we can actually do and build from it. Same thing with all the Dharma. The Dharma and the teaching. Just look at how many days since April 24th has it been since then. How many days had, not including today obviously, but how many days had Master already come out and speak to us? And not including that, there were many, many days. There were the volunteer assembly. There were others. How many days that Master was talking? Did we catch up to all of it? Did we follow all of that? So we're not even talking about all the principles in nature. We're just talking about staying up with the progress of Master. It's already so much. It's not infinite, but it's already so much. How do we learn all of them? How do we catch up to all of them? And the idea is the same. Start with the principles that we can understand and accumulate from there. Don't stop, but start with every day. And then you'll realize that maybe you start with one a day. Maybe 2 days later, 1 week later, 1 month later, you'll begin to realize I'm learning 3, 4, 5, 10 a day. That's how we pick up the pace. But it's always starting with something small. Don't ever overlook something that is small. That would help you build momentum. It starts from there. Okay, so that's how it starts. But we don't stop at the stop. We don't stop at this step only. We continue. So you can't stop with just on this and say, oh, great, start with something small. And then every step you take is small. It doesn't mean that. That's the first step or the first few steps, but you have got to continue. How do you continue? We couldn't reach all the sufferings, Master said, because we don't have the affinity to reach them. So while you're doing something to the people that you have affinity with, you should also begin fostering the affinity with all the other people. And then you might wonder, how do you do that? Master shared with us, yes, you could do that by looking at them, by asking about them, by wanting to help them, even if you can't reach them right now. For example, all the war-torn regions in the world, in Sudan, in South Sudan, or in Syria, in these countries, we know about them, but we couldn't help them. So what can we do? Stay focused. Continue to care about them, even at a distance. And then when there's an opportunity, seize it. That's all there is you can ask about. Keep a very close watch. Because we don't have the affinity to reach them yet, but always keep the close watch. That's why Master talked about affinity. You didn't know about them, you couldn't do anything about them, but it's very simple. Ask. Ask about them, know about them, and one day there will be affinity to reach them. But if you don't know about them and you don't ask about them, even when there's an opening, you wouldn't know that there's an opening. So that's very simple. Start with something that you can do, but at the same time, maintaining a close watch on the things that you can't do. Prepare yourself whenever more layers to trap you. What do we do? And I think this is very important. This is what we're trying to do. Let us share how we have done to change ourselves. Because sometimes we feel that there are only so many things that we can do, right? We could change this. Let's start with one simple thing to change the habitual tendency. But as you share, as you hear other people share about how they change, you become more confident. You become more empowered to be able to change others, other afflictions as well. And I think when we are sharing, you are gaining power. You are slowly growing without you knowing that you could actually do more. So let us share how we've changed. And not only that, you could change other people without knowing, and other people could change because of your sharing. Okay. So also, how do we learn all the infinite Dharma in the universe? Yes, start with something that you know, but how do you learn? It's the same thing that I mentioned, right? Changing one affliction, maybe today, maybe a month later, 2 months later, you could change 3 all of a sudden. Same thing, learning the Dharma, learning the path, learning something. Maybe you learn 1 a day. Maybe in the very beginning, you only understand, masters say, 多用心. But maybe by the end of 1 month, you begin to pick up 3 or 5 phrases. So something like this starts somewhere. But once you start, you need to begin to see Dharma in everything around you. You don't just learn Dharma on the morning Dharma talk. You begin to see Dharma in everything that you see around you. Okay, so for example, Master shared this example with us, right? The sand in the fingernails versus the sand in the shores of the Ganges River. Are they the same? They are one and the same. The sand in your fingernails is the same property, the chemical, physical composition of the sand that is in the shores of the Ganges River. You can go from the sand in the fingernails to the sands in the shores. Understanding the sand will help you understand all of them. So that's going from 1 to infinity. So that's why you start from something small, something insignificant, like the sand in your fingernails. But if you go in deep enough, you will be able to realize that this sand is just like every other sand in the shore of the Ganges River. It may be something different, but mostly it's the same. That's how Master was able to go from one charity case and then expand, and all of a sudden understand, wow, this is exactly how it works with everything else, except there will always be differences. There will always be some differences, but there will also always be something that is the same. Okay, so that is how from one charity case, you're able to expand to see more things. Okay, so with enough time and practice, this power can be achieved, and Buddhahood is very much the same thing. With enough time and practice, you could do that. And Buddha was exactly that, telling us how we can do, telling us what we can practice and train so that we can get there. But if you imagine, Buddha had everything that we have. So why he is enlightened when we're not? What did he actually do? Well, with enough time and practice, he did, right? So that's what Master said. Look further. Don't just stop with knowing something, but look deeper. So look further, listen deeper, contemplate it more thoroughly. That's what Master shared with us. That's what Buddha was. Buddha was like us, except he had the capacity to think deeper, to act on it, to know, to see, to listen, to think and contemplate it. What about us? We have all the same thing. We have all the same thing that Buddha had, right? So the Buddha had eyes, ears, nose, tongue, the body, and everything. All the consciousness that he had. We share the same thing. So what was the difference? He contemplated more. He thought deeper that we didn't. We just finished something, we shed our tears, we share our hugs, and that was it. Go deeper, explore why, explore the causes, explore what would happen in the future, explore what was happening in the past. That was what Buddha did, right? So we should do what the Buddha did. We would be able to reach enlightenment too. That's what the Buddha shared with us. You could. Let me share with you what I did. And we could do that. And imagine that. That's what exactly Master was telling us to do. Let's look beyond what we can see. Let's do beyond what we would ordinarily do. Isn't that superpower? Exactly it. So Buddha left the palace, and you will be asking, I don't have a palace. How do I leave the palace? I'm not a prince, but you should too. Palace isn't just a palace. Palace represents our comfort zone. It represents our areas of livelihood. You should leave the palace too. That's what Master has been trying to do to elevate us, right? By watching Dai TV, you begin to absorb things that you would otherwise not absorb. That's what the Buddha did. Buddha knew that if he stayed at the palace, that would be the only thing that he understands. So he doesn't want to. He wants to get out of palace to see the world for what they are. We are in a very comfortable place. We are in a very place where, yes, there are challenges and obstacles, but it's very, very limited. It's like our eyes, we're just blindfolding them. That's what the Buddha chose to do. Take off the blindfold to see the world. We should too. And that's what Master introduced us to in this world of Tzu Chi. You would otherwise not see these people. You would otherwise not interact with these people. But now, Buddha left the palace. Master is encouraging us to leave our palace too. And that's what we should do. Yes, that palace, our palace. It's not just the palace. It's not our home, but it's in our mind, something that we deliberately put over because it was easy, because it was there for us all along and we felt safe. That's why we don't venture out. But that is now something we need to step out also. So 1 to infinity, but that was only on the personal level. It all talks about, right? Helping others by myself. It was talking about getting rid of my own afflictions on my own. It was talking about learning the Dharma on my own. That was personal level. But Master also says the superpower can be achieved when there's a group of people sharing the same goal, same determination, on the same path. They will also be able to achieve the impossible, right? So all these things were possible only because we all work on it together. That was the key, right? So all these things, sending the COVID-19 and all these aid all over the world, that was achieving the impossible by bringing people together, right? So catalyst for all these leadership and people working together is the virtue. So how do you get there? Master talks about the 3 things, right? The Sen Kou Yi, right? Body, the verbally, mouth, and the thought. So also talks about how if you cultivate your virtue, you're able to call on to people and mobilize people. And that's what the Buddha did. And that's what Master did. Otherwise, why would we work together with all the people that we don't know to do something that we don't know what it is and we are not connected to? Why? Because of the virtue, because it's also right, because we are inspired, right? So this is superpower. We already have it and we need to call on to more people and then we can achieve more superpower, transcendent power. So that was some of the lessons that I learned. But now let me share very quickly the 3 realizations from chapter 21. So first realization, what is considered rare? And this is something that Master talks about, right? The elephant in Thailand sees a sangha, a member of the sangha, sees a monk, and from far away, and the elephant would already be doing something like kneeling down and putting the nose high up, right? So what is considered rare? Is this rare? Is this rare? And is that impossible, right? So once again, we're going back to, if you look at it, it wasn't really impossible. It's only rare because we don't see it every day, but it's not impossible. The elephant was trained from when it was very, very young. We could be the same too. We could be like the elephant. We could be trained to do what other people seem to be impossible. So this is going back again to the supernatural powers or the transcendent powers of the Tathagata. We have it. Even the elephant had it. You just train it, it will become like this. We have the Buddha's inherent Buddha nature. We train it, we will become like the Buddha as well. Many impossible becomes possible. Rare becomes norm. So what's the difference? Why? Because we found the way and we're on this path and we're not alone. That goes back to the three things that we talked about. Know how we can do it on your own. Make sure you're on this path. And there are many people doing the same thing. Then you would have the transcendent powers. I try to make this very simple, but there's a lot more teachings behind this, okay? So is the Buddhahood. It's the same thing. Make sure that you know the teachings. Make sure that you're on the teachings, and make sure that you're not the only one doing this. You share this with more people, and this will be able to achieve same thing. Second realization from chapter 21. What was incomplete before, now it is complete. Same thing, talking about the impossible becoming possible. Rare becomes normal. What was incomplete before, now is incomplete. What was incomplete before? Remember the abundant treasure Buddha who appeared in the tower, in the stupa, right? What was incomplete before? He didn't have a chance. The abundant treasure Buddha didn't have a chance to expound the Lotus Sutra. Now, in the presence of Shakyamuni Buddha, now the Buddha was expounding. So he showed, abundant treasure Buddha showed to bear witness. What was incomplete before was completed by the Shakyamuni Buddha. At the same time, what was incomplete before, Shakyamuni Buddha told us about the Bodhisattva path, about the Lotus Sutra, but he didn't have enough opportunity to lead us on the path of actually becoming the Bodhisattva. So that's why Master always says that in the future, right now, we are the ideal world for the Buddha at the time. We have completed that part. Yet there are more things to be completed. So it's always talking about the past, something that was not done yet, and the present, something that had been done. All the time in the middle, it's the transcendent power that took us there. It's possible. Believe it, trust it, and then we will be able to make the future also complete as well. Lastly, the third realization. What is it? Master always talked about that in the past week, that what was predicted by the Buddha in the past to be the future world, where it's all the chaos, all the things are going bad, the people's mind are completely diluted, and all the things are all very difficult, right? All the things that you hear in the sutras about the world is going to decay and the things are going bad. Well, guess what? That's our world right now. The present world, it's the world that was predicted by the Buddha in the past. All the bad things are happening. That is what Master told us. And I believe it too. I believe it too. However, Master also said many, many, many times, the real bodhisattvas of today was only an ideal in the Buddha's time. Meaning that in Buddha's time, now is a very, very bad time. Chaos, everything. But also now is the real bodhisattva. That was an ideal. It's an ideal world. Now is the ideal world in Buddha's mind. So which one is it? Right now is the ideal world in Buddha's time, or it's the ruinous world in Buddha's prediction. Which one is it? It's both. And only we can tell. We are the one that can make the ruinous world into the ideal world that was in the minds of the Buddha. So what was incomplete can now be complete. But what was predicted is also happening. What can we do? Only we can tell. Even the Buddha can't go beyond that, because we have to choose what we can do to make our world an ideal place or a ruinous place, just like what the Buddha predicted. So that's my third realization. Now, there are many, many, many more, and the time is really short, so I couldn't do all of them, but I'm just glad that I at least get to share with you some of the thoughts that I have from this past more than a month. I think it was almost 40 days of teaching about chapter 21. Chapter 22 is a lot shorter and is a lot more straightforward. So hopefully we can spend more time. Don't stop. Don't just say, oh, we're done with 21, so let's go beyond that. No, always go back to the teachings. Think and contemplate. Remember, that's how the Buddha became the Buddha, because he thought about it, contemplated more. That's what we need to do too. But not just on your own, but together we can go further. Okay, so thank you. That's my sharing for today. Thank you. And now we're opening to the centers. Thank you.
I've forgotten to unmute myself. A very good morning to all brothers and sisters and Sifu in a boat. It's very early in Mozambique because it's 1:30 in the morning, and being able to listen to Brother Joe sharing at this time of the hour, it's amazing. And how the thing that I wanted to talk about of Mozambique exactly reflects on the story that Brother Joe has been sharing. I've shared a lot about how the touching stories of Mozambique, but I wanted to focus more today in a very short time is about my own realizations while I'm here in the last 3 months, how that I realized the importance of learning Dharma and spreading Dharma in Mozambique by seeing the real examples of transformations of lives of people here, and how Sister Denise has put in so much effort in order to achieve this. I'm not sure how many of you has been through the same transition period, but once I was a person who thought charity work and Dharma is something that is separated, which means that I enjoy doing the charity work and enjoy putting my effort in helping people, and in returns I'm seeing people getting help, and I get my satisfactions, and I continue doing that. In another side, I also enjoyed learning the Dharma, but I feel that this is more for my personal gains. It enriches myself, and to continue on this journey, it makes me realize a lot of new principles and a lot of new realizations in life, and continue and push me through this journey in helping other people. But I never actually thought of putting them together in my journey of helping other people, my journey of the charity side of Tzu Chi. That when I came here, before I came here, Master actually told me, I hope that when you're there, you not only use your medical ability to help people, but also spread the Dharma in Mozambique. When I heard this, of course, I say, yes, that's what I'm going to do, don't worry. But I didn't really digest it very well until the last 3 months, and how I see people transform, and how I see the true examples of the power of Dharma, the power that we're seeing today, that how it changes people's life, make me realize that, yes, in order to achieve the true resolutions of the world, we need to combine charity and Dharma itself, so that one day we will be able to achieve no disasters in this world. Why and how and why we need to combine this? I'd like to share just a short story of this amazing lady who I've been working with for the last 3 months. And I don't think we speak a lot about her story, because we always focus on our volunteers. But all this begins from this one person and reach all to the thousands of volunteers we have now in Mozambique, and how she reflects, she made me realize that it really starts from one, and it can be achievable. So as what Brother Joe has said, it is impossible, but it is rare, but it's not impossible, and we can achieve this. So Sister Denise is the one who started the Mozambique chapter with Tzu Chi Foundations here, and through her, she has moved her work from Maputo, where I'm in the south, and also into Beira because of Idai last year. But there was a lot of challenge here to do Tzu Chi's work, and as English speaker here, which probably understand much more better how difficult it is to understand the Dharma when it's a different language. Needing to do this in Portuguese, it's much challenging. We need to first of all translate what we understand into English and digest it, and then translate it into Portuguese again. But there are many of our volunteers who are illiterate. They don't read and they don't speak, so they cannot read subtitles. It's not as easy as just translating subtitles and giving out materials and they can understand it. It requires a lot of effort into teaching, word by word and phrase by phrase. Even for a song, it takes 1 whole hour to teach them so that they can understand completely. But that's what she's doing. And she's not only reaching out to help people physically, but she's also trying her very best in understanding the principles behind, and share it in a very simple and basic way to the volunteers. So I was shocked when I was here that among all the abundant work that we have, and she and persisted in the weekly teaching to the volunteers. There are times that I feel maybe we shouldn't do this because we have this amount of job that we haven't complete. Yet despite that, she continues to persevere through this and insisted that we must teach the volunteers regardlessly. And there are times that I feel lazy. I feel that it's okay to skip. Whereas I've seen how she continues despite difficulties, despite her health being a concern at times. So I've seen her not feeling well, and I remember this vividly that we were in Beira in the central region, and it was the day that we need to. It was the last day that we're supposed to come back to Maputo. So when we have volunteers up there, they rarely get the direct teaching of masters. So before we leave, we say we need to meet them so that we want to give them a last teaching before we go. But she wasn't feeling very well. So I said, okay, why don't you let me know what you need to tell them so maybe I could help you. But she said, no, she has to do it because she needs to seize the opportunity to share with them the story of Master, the teachings of Master, because she doesn't know when we will be going back to Beira again. So this really touches me because at that time we were both exhausted and she was not feeling very well. But she persevered through this, and because she puts the Dharma before her, she puts the teaching before her, and she knows that it is important that we don't just help them physically, but spiritually and mentally. And why is this important? That we must teach them. Why can we not skip a sessions? I doubt that too at times, and I realized that now that I know why, I'm going to show you an example. So this is what we're doing as well. At nighttime, because our young people, they're very busy during the day. They need to go to the farm. They need to learn how to use the computer. They really don't have enough time to learn the Dharma. So we appreciate any single moment that we have. So nighttime, this was at 7 o'clock at night, that I'm trying to learn the principles of Tzu Chi. And even though Sister Denise was saying that, I'm really tired, but then she still appeared there, and I always joke to her, say, you're always lying because you're always putting yourself into the turmoil. But she enjoys it, and I can see why. Every single opportunity is important to spread the Dharma, even though it's only just one phrase or one word. This is what happens in March 14th in our 1 year anniversary for Idai. Sister Denise at that ceremony spoke to the villagers of our future Da'ai village to tell them that they should seize any opportunity to do good deeds and walk the good path and think the good thoughts. And she says that when you have an opportunity to give, this shows that you're more blessed than other people. So these were absorbed by the people who attended the ceremony. Then we also did a little drama about how you can help people without actually using any money. So for example, you can use your eyes to help someone to see the road, you can take someone home, you can help someone to carry something heavy. So by this, it's something that we didn't plan. We didn't do this because we want them to work in the farm. No, it just happened naturally. We teach them the right thing without expecting anything in return. But what we saw in 2 months later when we came back to Beira is that this group of volunteers who were there in the ceremony were working in the farm, and we asked them as well, why are you coming to the farm every day to work? And they say, oh, that's because, a few of them say, that's because we heard the teaching in the ceremony that we need to seize any opportunity to do good. Then we will be able to receive. So you have to first learn to give before you can receive. So that's what they heard and what they learned. And then they didn't, and they're not expecting anything in return. When they say that we need to give before we can receive, it didn't mean that they are expecting to receive this vegetables in return. No, because when we ask them, so what are you going to do with all these vegetables that we have grown? And they say, well, we're going to donate it to the people in the villages. And then they led us to the village and show us the way to the granny, and say that this granny is living by herself. She's raising how many people, so they know, and because they work in the community. So from the teaching to this old lady receiving the vegetables grown from our farm, we could of course do it by I can just buy something and give it to this old lady, but this is not sustainable. There are countless people in this world that we need to help. There are always someone who is worse than the other. Even our volunteers here that you see in the photos, they themselves needed help. So we could probably only be able to look after them and not able to reach out other people. Whereas with the teaching, we're able to inspire, we're able to transform life. And from there, they are the one who goes out to reach out to more people. And that's the concept of from one to infinity. And starting from the very simple teaching that Master have, but we as the middle person passing on a message to the people who has no opportunity to reach out. And that's how minds are being purified, and how that we can create peace in the community. And eventually we will be able to achieve having disaster free in this world. But we need to do this together with the Dharma, otherwise it is not achievable. And that reminds me of the tug of war that Master always asks, by saying, which side is going to win, the good or the bad. And I think it's not only the good and the bad that is in tug of war. There are lots of things in the tug of war at the moment. Are we in the ruinous world, or are we in the ideal state at the moment? And this is still, we are able to create the ideal state from the ruinous situation. But is it just about the number of people? Yes, and the number of people can bring the site, will win the site. But I think there's another thing that we always do when we do tug of war, is that we always put some powder in our hand so that we can hold on to the rope tighter and we can pull. And I think that is what Dharma is. It brings us together, bringing a lot of one individual and create a very superpower in this circle that we are in, and then taking in more people from the other side, and creating more, inspiring more vegetarians over to our side. And without this powder we have in our hands, no matter how many people, we will still be able to pull over. If you imagine this world, because I see the Mozambican purest people that I've met, they could take in what you teach them and they're able to implement it so easily. But at the same time, if what they receive, if they're so pure that they can transform because of what they learn, it means that if they receive something that is not good, they will transform into the other side. They will move to the other side. So it is a tug of war that we are racing with time, and we're racing with other people. We need more people to come to reach this side, not because we not want the numbers, but we want to create a world that is peaceful and harmonious. And then the Dharma is essential in this. So that's my realizations in this 3 months, that I realized that I cannot just work as a doctor. And when Brother speaks about leaving the palace, of course many people would think that leaving the UK as a comfort life is my palace. I find that the most challenging part for me in terms of my palace is actually reaching out to people, teaching them what the essence of Dharma is, because I find that I'm not digesting it fully, first of all, and I'm fear of stepping out that my comfort zone and sharing. But seeing how Sister Denise using the most simple example in people's life to to make them realize things that the Dharma is not something in the air that is understandable. It's simple. It goes back to the very basic things of loving each other, respecting each other, and caring for each other, which is something that is not common here. And I think if we can do it here, we can do it all everywhere in our world. That we should put charity and Dharma together and not separating it, so that the side on the right side now will be able to pull over people on the left side. And for me, the simple things that keep me on, it's also very simple, that I always remember the personal resolutions with Master, that is not to pray for good health, but to have a spirit filled with wisdom and acuity, and not to seek for everything that to go as we want, but to wish for perseverance and courage, and not for look for any true responsibility, but look for greater strength. This is the three simple thing that I keep reminding myself in my time here. And I urge everyone to find that one thing that touches you and that keeps you going, and always keep that with you, and do not lose this, because it is the one superpower that you will keep with you, and it will keep you going. And that's my thing for sharing for today. Gan En.
Okay. Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Huang. So apologize for just the comment sharing just now. Actually, I didn't hear clearly. There's a lot of reasons. The first of the reason why I can't hear clearly is like now here at the abroad, I can clearly listen more deeper the sound of the chirping of the insects outside. This is rather than while Sister Karmen give us a sharing. And the second is like what the brother Shi Hao mentioned just now in his reviews for the chapter 21st. Is regarding the supernatural power of how we like to practicing in our consciousness for our mind and listening thought and our body the action. Actually, Brother Suhao just now mentioned that we should practicing in like we listened deeper, but just now I mentioned I listened, but not deeper in what I supposed to hear. But I was like influenced by what outside the chirping of the insects, the sounds. And the second is like while you are sharing, actually I can't pay a very full concentrate on listening. And that's this I have to lack of the affinity as well, I can say, to contemplate thoroughly for what the right Dharma is right sharing in front of me, but I can't hear the right Dharma. This is I lack of the affinity. So that's why we still need to, as a human ordinary being, this is what masters, keep stopping to challenge the disciple. We never stop listening to Dharma because she keep remind us this is everything happen in our daily life, the Dharma. So this is the right now what I'm facing. To be honest, I can't hear clearly and I can't concentrate at all for what listening. But I can see farther. I can watch farther through the PPT that you show to us. To be honest, and it was so amazing. The farm in Mozambique is, the planting is very, full abundant of the vegetables, which is quite looks very big and like it's very delicious. It's like a very delicious meal that after you've been cooked for the vegetables that you all plant. So this is what I enjoy just now, and I think this is what I can say today. And yeah, I think what Master say. And you also, Sister Karmen, I think like Brother Suhal mentioned, that you leave your palace in England, but you're back to the Pure Land in Mozambique. And I think you found your own palace and you found your own way to cultivate in the future. So this is very good to hear and to see you live well in Mozambique, and you have a company by a lot of living Buddhists out there, and I think Mozambique will get a bit, we're getting better in the future, because what you in your mind, I think all your people that you are facing, they all are precious, like treasures, and because you don't have any racial discrimination within, you know, the surrounding people that you meet, and I only can see you have a full of love, and you care for everyone. Everyone is precious in something. So I'm not sure whether you can catch my mind or my meaning, but this is what I try to say. You really do a good job, and I can give you the advice and wish you take good care of yourself, and also please help our master to take good care of her beloved disciple and all the black pearls living with the out there. Yeah, okay. I think this is what I'm feedback for just now what you share. So maybe I can pass it to Brother Xiao, see whether he can give further sharing.
So we have a little bit time, and hi Karmen. It's always good to see you. You know, you see her running in and out here at the abode when she was still here, and she looks so little. I mean, I'm not big, but she's even, you know, even more tinier. But on screen, and when she was sharing, that was powerful. And even though her voice was really low, and like what Master said, we have insects chirping very loud. You know, the insects are even louder than people here. Okay. So what is it trying to tell you? It's showing me that, yeah, we had the same feeling. I had the same feeling with Master, in that we see the pictures and we knew that that was indeed a supernatural power. We're just talking about that. You know, without this transcendent power, how were we able to bring all the vegetables? And compared to Taiwan, you know, it's the vegetable will be full of life, but there it's sand. How were you able to cultivate on sand? Yet when you start to cultivate, it blossomed so wonderfully. Compared to here, you know, then you have a lot of weeds and you have to, you know, cut them out. It becomes hard, right? So what is better? The only thing that I got out of this, well, not the only thing, I get many things, you know, I really, you know, I'm really happy to see Karmen. And so one of the things that I got out of this was, you know, the superpower didn't come from because you go into Mozambique. I think it came out because you were there, but it was there all along, right? And I wanted to stress that, you know, Sister Denise, because when she was unwell, she was able to still attend. Now, can you imagine just any mother or any daughter when they were ill, or when their mother or the children were ill, they would do the same thing. So you have that power. You just choose to whether you want to do this or not. And Master chose to do this, right? Even with her ailing health, she was able and willing to do that. That's power, because we normal people couldn't do it. You choose to do the things that to many people seems to be like superpower. But to you, it's now done. And you are now looking to more things, you know, and like you have in the tug of war, you mentioned that perhaps, and I had that realization that perhaps that's what you have the word Dharma on top of it. We couldn't quite hear everything, but I think you were saying that with that Dharma, it allows you to have more strength to pull on more. And I'm beginning to think that, well, when I'm losing the tug of war, because there are times that I lose too, does that mean that I'm not using enough Dharma? And maybe if I do, then maybe, you know, I'm not using my strength to pull, but I'm using more technique, you know, in a way, try to get there. So I think we should listen more from you. It's like this, right?
you have wonderful stories, but only limited people can hear it because of whatever reason, because of our insects here, okay? But you should share more. And likewise, for all of you online, you know, this is not just about the abode. This is about all of you, all of us that makes this journey. We're all on this journey together. And we're all on our way to become the Buddha. But we all have our experiences. Only through sharing and together as a group, as I mentioned, would this superpower, transcendent power, truly be realized, that it's so powerful. Otherwise, we'll still be on our own. So on this journey, we're never alone. And that takes everybody's effort together. Okay, so thank you to Master. Thank you to everybody. And that's our feedback from sharing from Sister Karmen. Thank you, Karmen. Wonderful to see you. Okay.